Alrighty here. So we're going to take a look at Impact Silver Corp. I haven't looked at this chart yet, but it's for one of my friends, Derek. This one's for you, buddy. So you can see here I'm just doing most of this analysis on TradingView, and right now I'm not paying for anything. So anything I do on here, anyone can go in here, just use an email and create their own account. And it gives you some different ideas by people that have different trading apparatuses on here. So yeah, you can see different perspectives from whoever has an account on here. And not that I use much of this, but it gives you some of the details, some of the earnings reports, and I know a lot of people like using this information, and maybe I should be a little bit more acquainted with some of this stuff as well. But we're going to take a look at the technicals. So I'm just going to pull up the full feature chart and yeah, see what it looks like. So the first thing is deciding which time denomination do we want to have our candles represent. So usually I always take a look at more of a long term and then look at different time frames. So right now each one of these candles is representing a month, and we can see that this data is going back all the way to 1997. And I'm not sure if this is a ETF or if this is a silver complete silver, if this is a mining company, but regardless, that doesn't really matter. Well, it does, because this doesn't look like the typical silver chart, but neither here nor there. We can start, let's just say we do some broader trend lines to see what aspect this is going within. So well, I just do something like this to create a top, and we'll do something here on the bottom and say something like so. So a very general estimation, out of here. Very general estimation would be to assume some type of price movement within here, and then we'd probably make a breakout option A to the upside. We could say one scenario, which would be go upward. The other scenario, we could break down. And this is where all this information just basically talks about every scenario, and it doesn't give you a clear, concise answer, which most people want. But it's worth taking a look at. So this is just on the monthly time frame, and let's just take a look at this indicator down here, and this is just general momentum. So it's a squeeze momentum indicator, and when we have downward momentum, we typically see price come down, and when there's upward momentum, we can see price increase. So it helps determine swings of momentum, and sometimes gives you an idea where plausible places are to enter into the market, or places that maybe you want to sell off. They're not perfect by any means, but there's something, and it's better than nothing. Right up here, you could say that we started low, and that's just going right down. So this is not really correlated with this, so to speak. We have a upward movement here as this is moving down. I don't want to get into too much, but that could be a sign of divergence. So sometimes technical people will say it's having bullish divergence when the price is going down and the indicators like the MACD are going up. So that could have been an indication that we were going to have a reversal of price right here. But that's looking a little bit further down the lens of history. So I don't think that that's going to be applicable information as of now. But what we could say is that in terms of the MACD, we're kind of having a downtrend, and we can almost look at this as a wave, and we're having lesser waves here as it's kind of minimizing. This is sometimes good because you always want to get into something that's somewhat going sideways and consolidating, because it has a lot of potential, you could say. On this month time frame, you can see that it's pretty flat though, so we didn't have any huge movements. And yeah, I'm just gonna move into a weekly sense and see if this has a little bit more of an indication what it's doing. So Same thing here. We can kind of see now that we zoom in, some of this stuff doesn't look quite as neat and dandy, but I'm referring to up here. But you can see where it's clearly within this longer time frame. So if you could see price action break above here, it would clearly break a bearish trend in the MACD here, which could be an indication that it's starting to have some good momentum. If we shorten this up a little bit, we can see that it's I'm not going to use that. We can see that within a shorter time frame, we're operating in a much shorter trend line down. So if we just look from 2012 to the current date, we can see that we're operating in a much shorter trend position. So right now we can say that we're forming a symmetric triangle where we're getting right here. We can see that we're getting some lower highs. And we're getting some higher lows, which means that we're going to have a breakout one way or another. And a lot of times when you look at different trading things and different apparatuses, they'll usually give you like, hey, this has a 40, like when we reach this point, it has a 53% chance to break down and a 47% chance to break back up. And I know that's not a huge margin, but none of this stuff is typical, to be honest. I'm just going to turn the volume back on here, because what you usually see, well, when there's a, yeah, I don't know if I can use that example, but let's say that there was diminishing volume here too, like you could really expect a violent move up or down. That's not the case. There's quite a bit of volume in here, so maybe it's not going to be such a drastic move one way or another when it decides to break out of this little symmetric triangle we're forming. And well, you could draw a different type of trend line here in the bottom too on this weekly sense to sniff it up a little bit. You know what? Just gonna delete that. All right, so on this weekly sense, just like everything since this pandemic, it's taken a fall downward here. I'm not really sure what this is, like what Impact Silver Corp is. It must be a silver mining company, perhaps. And if that's the case, then it might be a little bit different price action than silver. But in lieu of the current situation out there, I don't think that industries involved with silver are a bad play necessarily. Now it all comes down to what the government's going to do, where they're going to put the money to stimulate the economy. But I'm thinking overall, when we're looking at long-term plays, silver is definitely in my favorite. It's in my favorite group. It has a lot of use case. It's undervalued. There's a difference between what you could buy paper silver at, and if you try to go actually buy an ounce of physical silver from someone, the price is drastically different. So it might say, like, just on silver itself, that the spot price is something like 12, 13 bucks, but you go try to buy an ounce of silver from a pawn store or from a bullion, they won't give you that price. It'll be around 20 bucks. So that's just the reality of it. I mean, physical silver is worth more than what it's portrayed on paper, and that's because they can produce paper saying that they can have it vouch for physical silver, when in reality there's much more paper assets of gold and silver than there is actual physical silver or gold. So if any push come to shove came actually on the bank for these things, there wouldn't be enough to pay everyone out. So some people then say, well, in times of really crappy times, I mean, you want to have the actual stuff in your possession, but that's a little bit more so than my liking. So silver ETFs and gold ETFs, these are going to be a part of the stimulus too. I mean, they probably won't be completely forgotten about as they're incorporated with most hedge funds. But this one is not not as clear as a lot of the charts that I've worked on. I mean, this one is a good example of something that's not clearly trending up or down. Like this would almost overall have a downward trend. I mean, at the very start here, 1997, we haven't reached prices that have been this high since the beginning. I mean, we are having some higher lows, which is positive. And if this was something that you wanted to, if you had a lot of other major like global reasons or rationale, or you see some type of edge in how this is undervalued, like there's a lot of different things that come into this. So picking good stocks is sometimes picking businesses that are undervalued in relationship to what they should be valued. So when you see a good price for something that's worth more than it's actually showing on the market, that's a good investment. And how do you know what that is? Well, that comes from having a sense of trends and a sense of where the world is heading as a whole. And this pandemic has definitely shaken some of the faith into the financial system. I mean, hell, some people say it's going to be the last stroke there. Just gonna exit out of this shit, man. Sorry. Okay, where the fuck was I? Okay, yeah. So I was talking about paper currency. I mean, the thing is, like, with them printing all this money, billions, if not trillions of dollars being printed, it just devalues currency itself. So in that aspect, silver should become more valuable, or will be. Let me just rephrase that. It will be more valuable because assets themselves, physical assets, will go up in price during inflation. So that's unfortunately what happens when we print money while we're inflating the currency, which then makes assets like gold and silver eventually retain or start having their big bull runs, because in 2012, I mean, that's what happened. I mean, gold achieved its all new price realization when they inflated the economy with the housing market crash and to print the money. I mean, sometimes at the start, the US dollar can take a lot of that initially, and you can see some of that stuff going on right now as you see other currencies failing to the dollar. I mean, you can see a lot of people changing their currency into US dollars, but eventually those US dollars have to flow back into other assets. Now, where is this money going to flow into? Well, I'm not Nostradamus, but you could think that there's some companies that just won't go away. So when you're looking at Amazon or Apple or Facebook, people, I mean, shit, man, like Verizon Wireless is deemed an essential service. Is it though? Like, is your phone essential? I mean, in this day and age, it's kind of funny that it has been, it has been deemed so. Um, there is somewhat of a conflict of, like, let's say something like Apple, because China and the US both share Apple in terms of the corporation has vested interest in both the United States and China. So with trade war and all these other kind of things between the two countries, there may be a little bit, there's some type of interplay going on there. But when you look at a corporation like Amazon, well, you know kind of fair well that Alibaba is its kind of Chinese equivalent, right? So just a little bit of conversation about how sometimes conflict between the two major superpowers like China and the US can potentially, that global macroeconomic standpoint does influence the market, right? And then you could see, like, well, which country holds the most gold and silver? Well, it's China. China has the most. So for them, having these trade wars and these currency wars, I mean, you could see what's going on, or you can just, well, you can only imagine, let's just rephrase that, what the hell China and the US are doing with their currencies. And yeah, in that sense, I mean, it's kind of like well, you'd think that it would be a hedge against the traditional stock market, but when we have these big crashes, when people can't pay, let's say, their rent, they can't pay their mortgage payments, they can't pay basically what they're used to paying off every 2 weeks because they're not getting their check, Well, they're going to have to sell any and all assets, and that means all assets will sell off when we have some type of correction in the market, and then the assets that are not going to, then the true assets that have value will start showing that. So a lot of times people could say when there's a decoupling, like a decoupling of the S&P from gold and silver, more or less when gold and silver starts going up and the S&P starts going down, that's kind of a good sign that, hey, maybe the effects of inflation are starting to take place, but this might not be completely seen right away, especially when they're printing all the money and then buying back all the stocks. So when you realize it's some type of relationship between the government and the corporations that they actually choose to buy back into, it's actually kind of like, well, I'm not a political science expert, but it's almost, that sounds like fascism to me, when the government just basically gives specific exemptions to the corporations of their choosing, and that could be, well, the technological corporations, right? Things like Google, things like Apple, things like, you know, those type of things where technology is now so important that it's deemed essential, like food to us. Well, it's an essential aspect of gathering information and somewhat projecting the message to you as individuals. So it's just an interesting reality to come across. So just kind of went on a rant there right there, but this is still just on a weekly time frame. So if you're really, let's just draw a couple of lines of support here. So when we're looking at this, I mean, a lot of times people just use the bottom as support. So you could say like each one of these lower highs in this time frame could be deemed support. But sorry, when you're actually looking at these charts, like not necessarily when there's a bottom. Like let's say we look at that bottom right, let's say right here where there's no wicks. This could just be the time changing over. So when a week came over, we just changed here and we moved up. Versus when there's a tail, you can know for sure that there was some price action between the bulls and the bear, and therefore there should be more support when you see something like this. This whole zone, there should be support versus somewhere like just right here. And if you use that as a support, well, that's just when the ticker ticked over. There's not actually any, there's no battle happening here. So when we look at this, I would definitely say like, well, yeah, I could say that. I would say that, yeah, right there, we could definitely use this as some type of support line. I mean, just in a more proximal sense too. At 0.22, that's where she's at. So let's just look at this more historically. 0.22, and see what it's doing on these weekly time frames. So, well, you can just say in general there was a decent amount of price action between here and here. We kind of got stuck in it before. Here it dipped into this range, and you can see it touches both of these wicks, and we had a nice little reversal right there. And here we had a bunch of price action in here. So as we're coming down, it kind of stopped it for a while until it broke through. Right here, it's kind of funny, it just busted right through there, so there's not too much, but you could say right about there, there was a little bit of touch down there twice, so maybe that's a little bit better of a 2.3. That might be a little better. Yeah, I like that one a little bit better. A little better indicator of support right here. So this right here, I would say would be short term, somewhat of cut your losses type of point, but you can see right now it's already at 0.36, so that's quite the loss. So let's see if we can zoom this up a little bit more and look at it in a day-to-day sense and see if we can get a little better idea if we're trying to get into this. When's a good time to enter and exit out of this? So but yeah, this chart, man, this chart's wavy. So this one is not as clear as a lot of other charts that I've done, which makes it a little bit tough, to be honest. These main indicators I usually use, sometimes aren't as clear as they should be. So I could say, in a short standpoint, I mean, it's still looking like it's coming to the downside. We broke through that. It looks like we're kind of rounding right here, so we might have some positive momentum, a little bit of a bounce here. Like, well, we already had it, so it's too late to find that bounce, and it's tough to time the bottom. So you could have maybe looked at all this stuff and kind of seen, hey, I like this support right here, and the unfortunate thing is, let me just look back. The weekly here, yeah. So you can see when you zoom it in, it's not quite touching there, but so it just touched there one time, some weird ass touch. Or sometimes it isn't all pretty and stuff. But yeah, just gonna get back to what we're talking about here. So right now, like it's pretty choppy right now, to be honest. I mean, it's not clearly kind of hitting a point. I mean, I'm not sure. Like I said, if this is a mining company, what are the bigger fundamentals? Like for me to have no idea what this is, and for it not to be, it's not in a clear bull run, or it's more of an like in a bear market, I would say, since 2016, you could say. I mean, even longer so, I guess. 2012. So this is probably the height of silver. I don't know why it started higher than that, but this is when silver and gold kind of had their dump. So maybe this dumped off right there, and we could see it try to regain this, only get denied back and denied again. I mean, this would be interesting to take a look at. Like some people do breakout trading where they don't trade it until it kind of breaks up here, and a lot of times it fakes out, just fucking comes up and then dumps back down. But once it goes up and confirms and it touches here, then keeps going, like that's sometimes a good place to buy into, let's say, the stock, like if you're going to do more of a breakout investment. Like I said, right now, like this is kind of that investment here as we move through time. Like it shouldn't really break this trend right here. I would be pretty hesitant if it broke this trend, but right now, since it's in the middle of this, like technically it's tough to like be too confident in anything. I mean, it looks like we're having upward momentum here, so I wouldn't be, I mean, heck, this could move all the way up to like right here and move back down. It can move back up. It could just have this choppy action through here before it decided to go one way or another. And when we're looking in years, how long could that be? Hey, that could be a long time, man. Let's see. I'm gonna zoom it up a little bit more in the 4-hour chart. So when we look at this 4-hour chart, you can kind of see with this MACD, like when the orange line crosses over the blue line, that's kind of a signal to maybe sell. That's kind of saying that, hey, we're having a shift of momentum. And right here also could be a sign that, hey, maybe it's time to get back in. And you can see the value of looking at things at a different time frame. So if I just pulled this up and looked at this 4-hour here, like I'd just be like, oh yeah, we're bullish right here. We're gonna ride this up until it crosses over who knows where, and we're gonna come back down and we're gonna buy in up and down. But this one overall seems to be like conforming into a symmetric triangle, which it could move either way, up or down. I don't know much about silver mining, just that the cost is quite a bit. So maybe this is why this has kind of struggled, because the price reflection of silver is not very good to the mining costs, which is just like, well, everyone kind of screams like manipulation with silver all the time. So this, like, for a lot of reasons, I mean, if silver price goes up, like, this should be making a killing, that could be a real thing. So I'll put this into my little category of things to watch. I mean, I'm not really sure, man. Like, really, this is probably the most unsure one that I've done out of all of my videos, but it's a cool stock. I mean, it's just not very specific in terms of where it's going. So overall, it's within this bigger trend in this monthly sense, and then we could see it's even got a shorter trend that it's playing into, and depending on where it moves right into here, if it moves to the down or up, for me, I'd probably just, well, yeah, man, sorry to waste your time here, but you can kind of see what I'll look at. I mean, in here, I don't want to grab too much other stuff just because it's not. I don't see it. Yeah. I'm just going to call this a video. I'm going to do one on your other one, your gold chart. Okay, bud? All right. Out of here. This is the software I'm using, OBS.